But there are many like myself, veterans of the armed forces, prior law enforcement, who are intellectually honest. And I promise I'll always be intellectually honest for you here and fair and balanced on this show. And who will fight to the death to stop the threat our nation is now facing from these globalist corporations aligned with China that have compromised and taken over the Democratic Party. Let me list just a few examples of the immoral, shameful, and utterly bewildering dumbassery that we're seeing today from the left in the Democratic Party. And I'm going to, as I give you these examples, I'm going to try to do my best radical liberal impersonation. Here we go. Well, it is just a given. It's a given that children are going to be having sex. So, the school districts need to get with that curriculum and make sure that children are provided with condoms so they can have sex safely. I mean, it doesn't get any more ignorant than that. The truth is, children with bad parents, I wanted to use a different word, but I'm trying to be careful here. I'm trying to bring my show to talk radio, and so there's a station that I'm flirting with about that, and the owner thinks that if he hears me say a bad word here where I'm not constricted with the FCC guidelines, that means I'm going to do it on the air there. And I try to tell him, no, I'm doing it on purpose here because I know I can get away with it. I would never do it where I was under the FCC guidelines on the air. So I'm trying to show him, that, see, I could have used the S word right there, SE parents, but I said bad. Just giving a demonstration, I can control it. Children with bad parents are going to have sex, are the ones who may be going to have sex. Children with good parents who teach them the right healthy boundaries and the adult responsibilities and the dangers that come with sexual promiscuity at an early age. Parents who teach their kids that are going to result in their children, generally speaking, not having sex until they are older, okay? It's bad parents. It's not that children are just going to be doing it. They're going to model their behavior after what they're taught and what they see adults doing, especially their parents. Here's another example. Well, Dr. Fauci changed his mind after telling us masks do not stop the coronavirus. Has now said we should wear masks if we are in a setting where we can't social distance. So I'm making my 4-year-old child wear a mask outside all the time. Everywhere we go, I make my 4-year-old wear a mask, especially if we go to the playground where there might be other children playing. Who the hell are you people who make your little children wear masks outside in the fresh air? I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? It's supposed to be when you can't social distance at all. That's what Fauci has said. You wear a mask if you go into a place, I don't know, like Starbucks or something, where you can't social distance and you're going to be in close proximity, is where you wear the mask. You don't wear it out. You're driving around in your car. Who the hell drives around in their car? Who are you people? You sheep. This is what I mentioned earlier. This is the irresponsible. This is the real danger. Being that ignorant and dumbed down and that acquiescent, and that you don't have a mind of your own with common sense to know better than to put a mask on your child just because you're driving around and it's just you and them in the car. Or they're outside. I'm down at the Capitol getting interviews from people, and all these parents are out there with their little kid in a stroller with a mask on. So I asked them, hey, why do you have your little child wearing a mask? Get away from me! They're not even able to have a conversation. They say you're crazy for asking them. I'm crazy for asking them that. I say, no, I'm not crazy. You're the one that's restricting the oxygen your child desperately needs. Ask any pediatrician about that. There's no reason at all. It's harmful to them. It's child abuse. So that's the truth. You're abusing your child, abusing them, restricting their oxygen, making them wear a mask when they're outside in the fresh air, especially when they're outside in the fresh air. Their little developing bodies and brains are harmed by that restriction of oxygen caused by having to wear a mask. It lowers their immune system, just as it lowers the immune system of you, of us, of all of us adults. But especially little children, because their bodies, their brains, their immune system are still developing. But besides, it says on the surgical mask box, the ear loop surgical mask box, the kind of mask that a lot of people wear, they usually like blue, light blue, and they have the ear loop. It says right on the box of a lot of those ear loop masks, this mask will not protect you from the coronavirus. It actually says, they've updated it, not just virus in general. They actually now have, many of them say, it will not protect you from the coronavirus. Understand that. So take the mask off your children, and like the Great Barrington Declaration says, signed by over 15,000 doctors, get them back into the damn classroom. Program. I'm Connie Bryan, and you're watching The Connie Bryan Show on this special November 4th, 2020 We the People edition. I've got a lot to talk about on the program. I want to address something very disturbing that I encountered when I tuned into the Alex Jones show last night on InfoWars. It was, and I'm not at all exaggerating, it was a drug and alcohol binge between he and Joe Rogan live on the air for the whole show. And it was just challenging for me. I wrote a letter to him. I'm hoping it gets to him. I had to send it through a third party, and I'm going to read the gist of it for you here in a minute. It was challenging for me to come up with words to describe how utterly disgusted I was at the hypocrisy from him. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. But just a couple of announcements to start off the show. I've got a couple of new platforms that I'm developing for the show because, like I've explained before, a lot of us who do this kind of thing are suffering from more and more direct censorship from, YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. And I've been really targeted with it on YouTube over the years. So it really helps a lot. First of all, let me just remind you, if you could like the video, because that goes against, it kind of helps to counter their algorithm that tries to keep my show from showing up in searches. So the more people would like it, that actually works in my favor to help boost it for people to find the show. And also, if you could subscribe, that would be fantastic, because that does the same thing. That helps boost the show against their algorithms that like to sort of keep it down. So if they don't see subscriptions, if they don't see likes, and then it really helps the algorithm to keep you down, that kind of thing. So also look for my program on Patreon.com if you might consider, if you have the means and you might consider being a sponsor. That's a great venue for doing that, where you could become a patron of the show. I just put it up there, don't even have any, so you might be the first one. I don't have any patrons yet. So it'd be really cool if you are someone who has the means and you'd like to support the show a little bit financially. You can do that on Patreon. It's patreon.com/ConnieBryan. Also, I'm starting to produce content on a couple of other platforms, one being BitChute. How many of you have heard of BitChute before? BitChute.com. So look for me on bitchute.com/ConnieBryan. And I think you could also just type in The Connie Bryan Show on there and it should pull it up. And I heard recently about Rumble, which is another competitor trying to create an uncensored free speech venue after all that we've seen, all the struggle we've had with YouTube. It's another similar platform format for videos to be uploaded. So if any of you are interested and you produce content, you might want to look at rumble.com. So I just recently created an account with them, and you should start to find some of my content on rumble.com. All right. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to remind everybody about, I've mentioned this before in a couple of previous episodes. I'd like to do some freedom parties. With all the lockdown BS that we've seen, these unconstitutional dictatorial edicts that the governor himself in California, Newsom, doesn't even abide by, and got caught at the French Laundry restaurant, eating with 12 or more people from all kinds of, I don't know how many different households it was, and he's got these edicts telling us we can't have more than 3 households over for Thanksgiving, and all this is just such massive hypocrisy. He was violating his own ridiculous, unconstitutional, abuse of power edicts. But with all of that going on, it's just, in California, it has ruined it for, especially for musicians like myself who do that for a living part-time. And so I'm trying to create some private parties that I'd like to call freedom parties. So if you'd be interested in doing that, we could book some music for a party like that, and we could have a really good time. So keep that in mind. If any of you out there would like to do something like that, hit me up. I'll put my email up on screen. All right, let's get right to it. The title for today's episode, and of course I will have an op-ed that this is modeled after that you can find on my website, on my blog. I hope you'll check that out too. I think you'll really like it. The title of the op-ed and what we're modeling on for the show tonight is The Real versus the False Danger. So let's begin with the false danger. The false danger is the unnecessary panic and fear of COVID-19. Notice I said the panic and fear of it. That's not to say there isn't a new virus of some kind, that's on the order of another version of the cold or the flu, and that for some at-risk people, it can become deadly. The same has always been true with the common cold and the flu. And it's critical to remember that every cold virus is a coronavirus. The common cold is a coronavirus. Did you know that? Did you know there are thousands of coronaviruses? It's true, and they're mutating all the time, just like the flu does. People, oh my God, what if the coronavirus, it could mutate? Well, the flu mutates all the time. That's why they can't get the flu shot to be that effective, because they're always shooting in the dark trying to figure out, well, what version of the flu is it going to be? How is it going to have mutated, and is this going to be effective against this year's version of the flu? Because there's so many different versions of the influenza virus. Strains, I guess you'd say. As I have been reporting to you on my show and writing about for a long time, a huge and growing number of top doctors and scientists have been saying for months now that all this is another version of the flu. But the mainstream media that you're addicted to, CNN, MSNBC, PBS, NBC, CBS, ABC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, to some extent even Fox News, is intentionally hiding that fact from you. Because they're bought and controlled by global corporate elites who are behind this, what I call a panic-demic agenda. And as I have steadfastly told you, over 15,000, many more than 15,000 by now, top MDs, physicians, epidemiologists, medical scientists have added their signatures to a recent powerful declaration from 3 of our nation's top doctors, from 3 of our nation's top universities, those being Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, jointly released document that's called the Great Barrington Declaration. How many times have you heard me mention it? Well, have you gone and checked it out? Because that's critical that you do that. And you'll see what I'm saying. And it's a short, I think it's 2 or 3 pages. It's not that long. But it's funny. Whenever I put up an article on Facebook, and it's usually 2, 3, 4 pages. It's so sad. It would be funny if it wasn't sad. You know, I'll have people attack me and say, "What? Who do you think you are that you think you need to write a thesis for everybody to read whenever you're going to put something on Facebook?" It's like, it's 2 or 3 pages, dude. Okay? I know you're used to, because you're such a doper, you can't handle more than a tweet. See, that's the problem. Oh, God, it's just, and I'm going to get to more on the doper thing in a minute with the Alex Jones thing. But the Great Barrington Declaration, it's just like a short, like a 2, maybe 3-page document. And it cuts right to the chase, and it states the same thing that I've been writing to you about long before they ever came out with it. Been telling you on my show for months, the same thing they say, that we got to get our kids back in school, that they're not at risk. There's no reason for them not to be in school. Do you know that every Western country, every Western civilized nation, but us, ever since summertime, has had their children back in the classroom? Sweden never even stopped their kids from being in school in the classroom. And they've been fine. That's because, just like these doctors are saying, that the media is hiding from you, there's no excuse for the schools being shut down. It's all a political virus. It's all an agenda of control going on here. And the Great Barrington Declaration says we've all got to get back to normal. The vast majority of us will be just fine, just like I've been telling you the CDC has always said. That it's only a narrow group that we need to focus protection on, the at-risk group, and the rest of us need to get to what's called herd immunity. And I like to say, instead of herd stupidity. You know, just believing everything that the reality show media owned by these globalists tell you. Like a freaking sheep. You got to be a wolf. That's what you were meant to be as an American. A strong, independent, free wolf. So remember, I said the false danger is the unnecessary panic and fear of COVID-19. Now for the real danger. You ready? You sitting down? Let's get to the real danger. The real danger is your fearful, obedient, sheep-like acquiescence. The real danger is your irresponsibly abandoning your own independent common sense and fearfully and obediently giving up your precious American civil liberties to such massive abuse of power by global corporation-controlled politicians like Gavin Newsom, like Governor Gretchen, I think it's Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, who are behind this fear-based, media-manipulated panicdemic. And those governors are just their shills, their puppets. People like Dr. Fauci, the biggest shill for Big Pharma there is. And their more and more openly admitted agenda of these globalists and these global corporations aligned with China is an end to our strong Western culture of individual freedom and independence. And they want to replace it with a new Great Reset design, a new Great Reset design to make us entirely dependent on these global corporations and on a world government that they envision themselves entirely controlling. Understand this. Freedom and liberty require one thing. Above all, even above courage and bravery to fight for that freedom and liberty, they require one thing beyond even that, and that is responsibility. So, the biggest cancer and threat to our precious freedom and liberty, even above Marxism and communism in general, would be irresponsibility. The insane Marxism and communist behavior we now see taking over the Democratic Party and that is threatening to destroy our American republic and the American dream, it is a result of decades of dumbing down and massive irresponsibility, mainly from the left. I must say, as I say that, I have to say also there has surely been a lot of dumbing down on the right and in the Republican Party, but not nearly to the degree of the mind-blowing, grossly immoral, and un-American dumbing down on the left with the Democratic Party, a party I have gradually become utterly ashamed of and probably will not remain a member of much longer as a result. Keep in mind, if you are a Republican, there are a lot of traditional liberals like me who are just as patriotic as you are, maybe more. There are many like myself who are veterans of the armed forces and prior law enforcement. I'm prior law enforcement myself, and I know that we need reform. I saw it firsthand. I know we need reform in law enforcement. That doesn't mean defund the police, you idiots that are wanting that. Stupid radical idiots on the left. That's why it looks like I'm going to have to leave the Democratic Party, because they've lost their mind. They're not the Democrats anymore. They're a bunch of Marxists aligned with these global elites in China. But there are many like myself, veterans of the armed forces, prior law enforcement, who are intellectually honest. And I promise I'll always be intellectually honest for you here and fair and balanced on this show. And who will fight to the death to stop the threat our nation is now facing from these globalist corporations aligned with China that have compromised and taken over the Democratic Party. Let me list just a few examples of the immoral, shameful, and utterly bewildering dumbassery that we're seeing today from the left in the Democratic Party. And I'm going to, as I give you these examples, I'm going to try to do my best radical liberal impersonation. Here we go. Well, it is just a given. It's a given that children are going to be having sex. So, the school districts need to get with that curriculum and make sure the children are provided with condoms so they can have sex safely. I mean, it doesn't get any more ignorant than that. The truth is, children with bad parents, I wanted to use a different word, but I'm trying to be careful here. I'm trying to bring my show to talk radio, and so there's a station that I'm flirting with about that, and the owner thinks that if he hears me say a bad word here where I'm not constricted with the FCC guidelines, that means I'm going to do it on the air there. And I try to tell him, no, I'm doing it on purpose here because I know I can get away with it. I would never do it where I was under the FCC guidelines on the air. So I'm trying to show him, that, see, I could have used the S word right there, SE parents, but I said bad. Just giving a demonstration, I can control it. Children with bad parents are going to have sex, are the ones who may be going to have sex. Children with good parents who teach them the right healthy boundaries and the adult responsibilities and the dangers that come with sexual promiscuity at an early age. Parents who teach their kids that are going to result in their children, generally speaking, not having sex until they are older, okay? It's bad parents. It's not that children are just going to be doing it. They're going to model their behavior after what they're taught and what they see adults doing, especially their parents. Here's another example. Well, Dr. Fauci changed his mind after telling us masks do not stop the coronavirus. Has now said we should wear masks if we are in a setting where we can't social distance. So I'm making my 4-year-old child wear a mask outside all the time. Everywhere we go, I make my 4-year-old wear a mask, especially if we go to the playground where there might be other children playing. Who the hell are you people who make your little children wear masks outside in the fresh air. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? It's supposed to be when you can't social distance at all. That's what Fauci has said. You wear a mask if you go into a place, I don't know, like Starbucks or something, where you can't social distance and you're going to be in close proximity, is where you wear the mask. You don't wear it out. You're driving around in your car. Who the hell drives around in their car? Who are you people? You sheep. This is what I mentioned earlier. This is the irresponsible. This is the real danger. Being that ignorant and dumbed down and that acquiescent, and that you don't have a mind of your own with common sense to know better than to put a mask on your child just because you're driving around and it's just you and them in the car. Or they're outside. I'm down at the Capitol getting interviews from people, and all these parents are out there with their little kid in a stroller with a mask on. So I asked them, hey, why do you have your little child wearing a mask? Get away from me! You know, they're not even able to have a conversation. You know, they say you're crazy for asking them. I'm crazy for asking them that. I'll say, no, I'm not crazy. You're the one that's restricting the oxygen your child desperately needs. Ask any pediatrician about that. There's no reason at all. It's harmful to them. It's child abuse. So that's the truth. You're abusing your child, abusing them, restricting their oxygen, making them wear a mask when they're outside in the fresh air, especially when they're outside in the fresh air. Their little developing bodies and brains are harmed by that restriction of oxygen caused by having to wear a mask. It lowers their immune system, just as it lowers the immune system of you, of us, of all of us adults. But especially little children, because their bodies, their brains, their immune system are still developing. But besides, it says on the surgical mask box, the ear loop surgical mask box, the kind of mask that a lot of people wear, they usually like blue, light blue, and they have the ear loop. It says right on the box of a lot of those ear loop masks, this mask will not protect you from the coronavirus. It actually says, they've updated it, not just virus in general. They actually now have, many of them say, it will not protect you from the coronavirus. Understand that. So take the mask off your children, and like the Great Barrington Declaration says, signed by over 15,000 doctors, get them back into the damn classroom. Just as 15,000 other doctors, MDs, medical scientists have all said, all signed on to the Great Barrington Declaration. That's one of their main points that they hit, is that it's shameful, the damage, the trauma we're doing to our children psychologically, socially, educationally, keeping them out of the classroom. Here's another example of the dumb assery from the left. Well, it's just a given that children will be doing drugs. Children will be doing drugs and getting high. So it's not my responsibility to be any kind of role model for kids. I mean, I want to get high. And that's normal. No, it's not normal. It's not normal. It's abnormal. Okay? You're being a horrible example for young people. The truth is, you are just a conforming sheep to unhealthy, abnormal, irresponsible behavior with your wanting to get high, with your saying, I don't have to be a role model for kids. Shame on you. You sorry excuse for an American? The truth is, we need to get back to what is healthy and normal, and that is what is healthy and normal that we have to set as our priority as adults is being healthy role models for kids in our daily lives. That means living by example and not smoking pot and other drugs and abusing alcohol. I mean, that's just basic common sense. What the hell has happened to basic, healthy, community values, common sense in America? Once again, freedom is not guaranteed to you. It will be lost freedom and liberty will be lost to a nation that becomes so irresponsible that it loses its moral compass, its moral responsibility to be first and foremost a role model for its children. Well, the CDC has told us the coronavirus is not a threat to our children. It's really only a threat to a pretty small percentage of old people who have other comorbidities, but they're telling all of us that we have to shut down our businesses, lose our jobs, and keep our children out of school. That doesn't make sense, but I'm going to be scared anyway because CNN and PBS are telling me I could easily die and that I should keep my children away from other kids and out of school. So I'm just going to obey. I'm going to obey everything they say. I'm not going to question the authority of the media, even when this doesn't make sense. I mean, they wouldn't lie to me. The truth is, there is no virus that is going to kill you. That isn't to say there isn't a virus. It is just not going to hospitalize or kill you. The vast majority of you are going to be just fine. It's not the existential threat to you or your kids that the media is trying to make you think that it is to scare you to death. Your kids need to be back in the classroom now. The media is lying to you in their nonstop, gross exaggeration of this virus. You know better, deep down inside, than to live in such fear and to acquiesce and give in to this un-American, insane attack on our civil liberties. This is an agenda of control behind this. You know better. You should be able to, with common sense, see this. You are stronger than that. Those are just a few of many examples I could list here of the real danger that being such ignorant and fearful acquiescent sheep to what is a mind-blowing degree of abuse of power from our politicians, coupled with the simultaneously mind-blowing degree of fear-mongering and manipulation by the left-wing media to needlessly create mass panic. Acquiescing to that, the damage that you cause, not just to your children, but collectively to our whole nation. We risk losing everything this nation is supposed to be about because of that kind of dumbed down, ignorant, fearful acquiescence to such an agenda of control that you should be able to clearly see by now. You have all these doctors, all these top experts sounding the alarm. All these remember they call it the White Coat Summit, where these doctors came more than once to the Supreme Court. Look it up on YouTube, White Coat Summit. You'll see all these doctors coming out saying, I said look it up on YouTube, it's all been banned. What am I thinking? That's the thing, they banned it, they censored it. I think you can find it on band.video, the White Coat Summit, where you'll see the videos. But on some alternative platforms, you'll be able to find it if you seek it out. It's there. You can search for it using White Coat Summit. It's all these doctors who've said, look, we've all successfully treated any patients that we had with hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and we've saved their lives. I mean, their lives weren't at risk. None of them died. You know, and they talk about how all this is so exaggerated and overblown, and that it's nothing more than maybe a severe version of the flu. Let's get back, though, real quick to the drug thing. Like I used that one example. Well, the kids are just going to be doing drugs. I don't need to be a role model. I want to share my letter that I wrote to Alex Jones. After tuning into his program and being shocked to see that he had Joe Rogan on, who's one of the top, if not the top podcast in the nation right now, who's known for doing drugs, doing marijuana at least. I don't know about any others, but on his show live. Alex has him on, and they proceed to not only have a drug binge episode where they're smoking the marijuana and also getting intoxicated with alcohol, and they're passing the bottle back and forth. I'm just going to get into it with the letter I wrote, and it'll explain what he did. I mean, even making light of psychedelic and hallucinogenic drugs. It was unbelievable to see it coming from Alex Jones, because it was a completely hypocritical display of behavior from everything he claims to be about. So here's my letter to Alex from InfoWars. Alex, do you not understand that any credibility you had built up with viewers, listeners, especially relatively new ones like myself over this past critical year, is all but destroyed when you behave in such a massively hypocritical way with such unhealthy and immoral behavior? Is there nobody close to you who is asking you, do you realize how many young people are going to want to emulate that drug-induced let's get wasted because it feels good lifestyle when they see it so paraded and celebrated live on your broadcast? Along with someone like Joe Rogan, who has the current top podcast in the nation, I think. And why does he have the top podcast in the nation with all of his smoking pot on the air? Well, that's why. He caters to that unhealthy, irresponsible, dumbed down audience that we're trying to reach, that we're trying to wake up to take our nation back. Is that what InfoWars is all about? I thought it was about saving this nation from that very sick, dumbed down ignorance of a loss of moral compass due to things like normalizing getting high, due to normalizing drug and alcohol abuse. I thought InfoWars was about raising awareness how that is exactly what the globalist elites in communist China are counting on in order to destroy our precious republic. Do you understand that, everybody? That's what Alex talks about on his show all the time. They're counting on us being a bunch of drug-addled, weak, addicted, to controlled substances and all kinds of narcotics and taking all kinds of psychedelics and everything. They're counting on us being such weak people like that, while they are completely not. They're aligned with China, and China is very disciplined, like a very robotic, more and more. And they're intent on destroying America and taking us over, and they're counting on us being a bunch of druggies and alcoholics, addicted to anything and everything, dumbed down. That's what they're counting on. I say these things as a traditional liberal, I told Alex in this letter. I say what I'm saying to you as a traditional liberal myself who has recently seen the hijacking and global corporate compromising of the Democratic Party, and I have amped up production of my show in a huge way to wake more Democrats like myself up to the fact that we are at war already with these global elites and their agenda aligned with communist China, and our nation is in dire peril. We aren't going to be able to protect our republic with a nation full of drug and alcohol binging dopers. As you, Alex, effectively encouraged by your very display of that on your show last night, what the hell is wrong with you to be so hypocritical and betray your moral message of your show so obviously? You so obviously betrayed it. I mean, your regular claim, Alex, is that you are ostensibly about waking people up to returning to our moral, ethical, American family value roots. But this live, on-air drug and alcohol binge last night was just a hypocritical mockery of that, of your overall message you always have on your program. You try to say your program, you want it to be a family-oriented program. That wasn't what it was last night. What it was last night, and I'm not exaggerating, looked like it belonged on an adult channel. He had this montage of clips from when he was on the Joe Rogan program in which he was back and forth. They were saying Alex to Joe Rogan, they wanted to have sex with each other. Of course they were joking, but it was just this really low, vulgar, dynamic, this disgusting display that is completely opposite of the moral message that Alex normally brings with his show. I mean, I can't even do it justice sharing with you what it was. I'm trying to give you a couple of examples. It was 10 times worse than what I've described. Okay? If I said to Alex in this letter, if this, well, I'm going to say S show, if this S show of yours did the damage it has done to me as an occasional viewer last night, I can only imagine how many more of your trusting American patriot audience you have hurt and probably turned off entirely, making us all feel so foolish for having fallen for what would now appear to largely be nothing but an act on your part, Alex. Let me break it down even further here. You not only constantly got high on dope and alcohol during your whole show last night, but you dropped some MFer bombs. I mean, that's just going way off the deep end. Dropping MFer bombs? I mean, I've seen you before slip and, say the S word and then tell everybody, sorry, I'm trying to keep this a family show. But then you have Joe Rogan on, and you decide you're just going to smoke dope and get drunk and pass the alcohol back and forth and start using MFer bombs and all. And let me continue. You made light of doing psychedelics. You made light of doing hallucinogenic drugs several times. Made light of it. With exception of at least you did say that in some rare cases it makes people go insane. You said in some rare cases it can make people go insane. Are you kidding me? What message does this send to young people, Alex, who we are trying to reach in getting our nation back on track and finding its moral compass? What message does that send to them? You know what message it sends to them. There's no excuse for it, what you did on your show last night. And I'm not even saying any of this as some kind of evangelical Christian type person. Understand, I've learned a complete understanding of all things spiritual, and that understanding goes way beyond any dogmatic belief such as Christianity that says that there's only one religion, and only one way to behave and all others are condemned. That is the ignorant mindset of many on the right, sadly. That's the one drawback, is as I move back to the right with all this crazy insanity now that's taken over the Democratic Party, it's so difficult because so many of them on the right, that's one of their biggest problems, is their bigoted, dogmatically bigoted, condemning concept of this God outside of them that's it has to be a man, okay, that demeans, it makes women second-class citizens all throughout the Bible. And, that has to have animals sacrificed for a blood lust to be satisfied. Has to have an animal sacrifice all through the Old Testament. All the time. Has to have a bloodlust satisfied from an animal sacrifice. And then, of course, ultimately, a human sacrifice, supposedly with Jesus. Blood. It's all about the blood being shed. And they have all these songs. There's power in the blood. What's the other one? There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins. And I'm washed in the blood. That Jesus said cleanses me, and it's what God needed and all. It's this sick. And see, you thought, like I have this stand-up bit that I do about Abraham and Isaac, because Abraham grabbed Isaac, and was going to sacrifice him until the angels supposedly. I have this whole funny bit that I do about that. Check it out. You can find it on my YouTube channel, on my website as well. It's entitled Abraham and Isaac Stand Up. And it's like, that was all supposed to be symbolic of Jesus ultimately having to die and shed blood. It's just, like I say in the bit, though, you thought that human sacrifice, human and animal sacrifice was just devil worship stuff. Oh, no, no. It's the bedrock of Judeo-Christianity, and it's sick. And it's sick because it's man-made, and we have to wake up to spiritual truth. If we're going to make progress and save our nation, it's not about believing in that kind of evangelical Christian dogma that it's all Satan that's destroying. No, it's not. It's just massive ignorance and not understanding true spirituality. Your true spiritual nature is not sinful. And when you wake up to that true spiritual nature that is not sinful, you wake up to it, it opens your mind to understanding your moral responsibility to live a holy, healthy lifestyle. Okay? It's not about God and Satan and all this stuff. That's so like preschool base introduction to spirituality. Okay, they've begun to be introduced to it, but they have this sick version of it. It's like what we have to do is get people up to like at least a high school graduation understanding of spirituality, that we're all one, we're all a part of what God is. Okay, there's no one religion, that everybody else is condemned. That's just bigotry. Even the element in the Jewish teaching that they're the chosen race and all this stuff, that's the origin of racism. And that's, like I've said on a previous episode, that's how we got here with the rebellion on the left, is because they're so sick of the hypocrisy from the right that is engaged in so much bigotry and racism and empire building at the expense of Native Americans and black people and Chinese and so many others. Okay, so that they rebelled to an extreme degree that now, ironically, they've aligned themselves with these global elite forces in communist China that could destroy our country. So what we have to do is find that middle ground I just got done talking about, where you learn what real spirituality is. You begin to wake people up to the fact they're not sinful by nature. They are a part of what God is. They themselves are what God is. And when you wake up to that, it's not an ego trip you're on. It's a humbling awareness of your moral responsibility to live a holy life as an example for others. Not the I almost did it, didn't I? Not the S show that we got from Alex and his hypocritical display last night with Joe Rogan, not giving a damn about being a proper role model example for young people. So nothing that I'm saying to you, Alex, about this is condemning you, I said to him in this letter. But what I am saying is that it is inexcusable for someone in your position who is always preaching to your audience the need to heal our nation from such loss of American and family values, and then for you to celebrate and engage in the very opposite unhealthy values, which are at the core of why our nation is so dumbed down and in so much peril. That's just shameful. And another example, one more example, I said to him. How can you talk about the hypocrisy of Governor Gavin Newsom's behavior mocking his own unconstitutional laws while he breaks them at the French Laundry restaurant in Napa? All the while, we all can now see that you, Alex, mock your own viewers. You mock your own listeners by undermining your own call to moral awakening for America. How can you do that? You can't. Sorry, you can't. You can't do that. People are going to hold you accountable for that kind of hypocrisy, just like we're going to hold Gavin Newsom accountable. That's why there's a recall effort going on and gaining steam. I just printed off the recall petition to sign it just before I started taping the show. Because that kind of hypocrisy is not going to be tolerated. It's not going to be tolerated for these for big pharma, these big tech shill governors like Gavin. It's not going to be tolerated for people like you, Alex. You owe everyone an apology, and you need to wake the hell up. and be that example and live by example and never act like that again. Come out publicly and make it clear you really effed up. And you know it. Because as adults, our number one responsibility is to set the right example with our lives. Young people, and I said this is what I'm getting to the close of my letter to him. I said, young people may not listen to everything we say to them, but guess what? They watch everything we do like a hawk. And they look up to us, whether we realize it or not, and they emulate whatever they see us do. And someone like you, Alex, who America needs right now, I mean, you had been unbelievably forward-looking. You know, a lot of the things you've said have started to come true, and it was a time, this is a time when people were starting to come over to your channel more and more. You've said it on the air. You were getting a lot more viewers because people were like, wow, Alex, we thought he was crazy, but a lot of these things he's been saying are starting to come true with this global agenda. We can now see it. You have a responsibility when you have all these people coming over to your channel now looking for leadership. You have a responsibility to set that example as a leader and not be a hypocrite. There's no excuse for you laughing and advocating for doing drugs live on the air with your show. I can't believe that I'm actually having to say this to you and devote a portion of my show to this. It's so obvious. It should have never happened. I mean, it only does huge damage, not just to your show, but it does huge damage to the monumental task that lies before us right now, that so many of us are working overtime right now as patriots to wake America up about. So I'll just continue in wrapping things up here. As I have said and will continue to say until people finally wake up, we're not dealing with, let's get back to the panic-demic. We're not dealing with a true pandemic. It's a media-driven panic-demic. When you have a true pandemic in the world, it's a virus that hits across all age groups equally. Okay? Do you understand that? I mean, MDs, any doctor, any medical scientist is going to tell you that. That's the definition of a pandemic. It's a serious virus that threatens the lives in a significant proportion across all age groups, not just being just like the flu in that it targets the at-risk groups just like the flu does. And like I said, we've had the CDC tell us from the beginning, the vast majority of you, if you get it, won't even know you had it. And well, then why are we doing this? Why are we shutting down the country? Why are we causing so many people to lose their small businesses? You know, and why are we telling them they're not essential, but every business that's on Wall Street, all the corporation businesses are essential? That's because it's all a bunch of BS. That's because it's an agenda of control on behalf of these global corporations to change everything in our country, to make us all dependent on them. But you don't have anything to fear. Getting back to the title of The Real versus the False Danger. You don't have anything to fear unless, and this would be the case when it comes to the flu season every year, you don't have anything to fear unless you are in the very small percentage of people who are in that at-risk group, in which case you should take normal, well, let's just say normal severe flu season precautions. As I said earlier, this is not just what I'm saying. This is what over 15,000 of the world's leading MDs, epidemiologists, virologists, medical scientists have all said as they recently signed on to the Great Barrington Declaration, which came out originally from the top doctors at Harvard, Oxford, Stanford University, and as I've said before on a previous episode, not exactly conservative universities, I might add, okay? So you can't say, oh, those are conservative. No. Sorry, Charlie, they aren't. They lean largely liberal. And they're just saying the truth. They're being intellectually honest. Okay, these doctors demanded that we stop this insanity and that we return our children to the classroom now. They called for all the rest of us who are not in the very small at-risk group, the vast majority of us who are not in those vulnerable at-risk groups, to return to normal and go about our unrestricted lives, common sense, saying that this coronavirus is simply comparable to a severe flu season, and that is all. And like I've told you on a couple of other episodes, and I've written a lot about it in my op-eds, Dr. Fauci wrote that in the New England Journal of Medicine, okay, in March. He wrote an article that was co-authored by the director of the CDC, Robert Redfield, and that's what he said to his colleagues, okay? Because he knows that you probably don't have a subscription to the New England Journal of Medicine, do you? I mean, real? You do? No. No, nobody except his medical colleagues. So he was narrow casting to his medical colleagues the truth. And he said in that article, March, look it up, Dr. Fauci, was it March the 26th or March the 24th of this year, 2020, in the New England Journal of Medicine, he said, you have to take into account that many more people have it than are being reported. Several times as many, he said, have the virus, and deal with it just fine, just like I told you the CDC said we would. Won't even know we had it, asymptomatic. He said you have to take into account at least several times as many people had it. That's what he wrote in the article. So when you do that, you understand that this is on the order, he said, of just a severe seasonal flu. Fauci said that, but did he say that to you in the reality show media? Did he say that to you? No. No, he said the opposite. He told his colleagues what I just explained to you, and then he went on the air as a shill for Big Pharma and the vaccine companies and tried to scare the S out of you by telling you it was 10 times more deadly. Because like I said, he knows you don't have a subscription to catch his article in the New England Journal of Medicine. So I'm back to in closing, the Great Barrington Declaration. They called for the rest of us who are not in the at-risk group to return to normal, go about our unrestricted lives, saying this coronavirus is simply comparable to a severe flu season, and that is all. But none of that was covered by the mainstream media, of course, because they're also controlled and owned and are shills and puppets for big tech, big pharma, and the global elites. But these doctors with the Great Barrington Declaration, they called for the proper focus. This is important because they're not just throwing all caution to the wind and everything. They're saying the proper focus for dealing with this new novel virus is for societal restriction to be targeted only for the protection of those in the at-risk group. I'll bet many of you saw that coming, right? Because it's common sense. They said we need to put the focus of keeping people, maybe keeping people away from large numbers of people and telling them how important it is for them to definitely social distance and take extra precaution. We need to do that for the at-risk group, not for the rest of the population that are not in that risk group. And to get back to normal so that we can gradually reach, and they say this, they use the term, so that we can gradually reach herd immunity, at which time when we reach that point, they point out, those at-risk groups would then be able to return to normal also. I mean, that is common sense combined with science, but it's being kept from you. You only find it when you find alternative sources of truth like my show. And there are some others out there, obviously, that are talking about it too. And then we get banned from YouTube and Facebook and stuff unfairly because they're going along with the false narrative of the reality show media, trying to use all this as a narrative to scare you to death on behalf of the big pharma companies and all, because of this vaccine agenda behind all of this. You cannot continue to be so subservient and engaging in such dangerous conformity by ignoring these things I'm sharing with you. We cannot operate a free society. One second. The bottom line is we cannot operate a free society with this level of sheepish, weak-minded stupidity, herd stupidity versus herd immunity, and fearful obedience to such obvious media manipulation and a big tech, big pharma agenda of control at the heart of all of this. And they're teamed up with communist China, because that's where this virus came from, in that Wuhan lab. And did you know? I've written about this a bunch of times and talked about it on the show. Don't forget, Newsweek exposed that Dr. Fauci was going around a federal ban on gain-of-function research, the dangerous gain-of-function research where you take an attenuated virus and you in the lab and you try to weaponize it and make it more dangerous and more infectious. He was doing that kind of research, and in I think it was 2014, the government said no more under the Obama administration. They said, we're not going to have this anymore. This is not going to be allowed. It's too dangerous. They had people raising red flags who were medical scientists saying this is too dangerous for people. Fauci was engaged in it. Well, after the ban, he went around that ban and continued to do it with the Wuhan lab in China. And he was being supported by Bill Gates. This is a fact, folks. It's not a conspiracy theory. It was exposed and reported about in Newsweek. Okay? So to the tune of like 7 million of your taxpayer dollars he was giving to this research going on of bat-related coronavirus gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab. Fauci was funding it with grants of your tax dollars. All right, so that's what's behind all of this. It's a nefarious agenda. This new RNA, very dangerous genetically modifying RNA vaccine. It's extremely dangerous, and they're rushing it. They're trying to use you as guinea pigs. It's an agenda. It's a very sick agenda behind all of this by these elites and big pharma. It goes beyond just trying to profiteer and be greedy. It goes way beyond that into some areas of eugenics, of the people that are pulling the strings at the highest levels. We might get into that more on another episode. But in closing, we can't operate a free society with this level of sheepish, weak-minded stupidity in the face of this obvious agenda of control that we can see if we just open our eyes and not just be so quick to be so fearfully acquiescent. Okay, Americans aren't meant to be like that. We're meant to be wolves and think for ourselves and be independent. I mean, you can run a country like China like that, and they do. So take the mask off of your children, especially when they're out in the fresh air, okay? Like I said, you can ask any pediatrician about that, how much they need that unrestricted oxygen as their brains and immune systems are developing. It's time to stop this insane, un-American, fearful acquiescence. You are stronger than that. You need to teach your children to be stronger than that. The way our grandparents taught us to be stronger than that. The fear of COVID-19 is the false danger for the vast majority. I'm going to say that one more time. The fear of COVID-19 is the false danger for the vast majority. The real danger is your un-American, weak, sheep-minded, fearful obedience to those who seek to dominate and control you with their global big tech and big pharma corporate agenda, all partnering with China. All right, thanks for tuning in to the show, and we'll talk to you soon.